This is Lecture 97 in the ABCs of Communism series that's accompanying Volume 7 on Communism in Europe when it appears later this year. And our topic this morning is primitive communism in the East European Paleolithic from the Urals to the Danube. And we'll start in Russia, in Gerasimovka. That's a village in the Sverdlov Oblast of the Russian Federal District. In this new Russian system, they have retained names like Leningrad for the county, the oblast, or Sverdlovsk for the oblast here, and then renamed the city. In that case, it's St. Petersburg, or in this case, it's gone back to the name of Yekaterinburg, formerly known as Sverdlovsk, but at any rate, that's just an aside. Nearby, on an ancient gravel terrace of the lower to middle Pleistocene and 186 feet above sea level, there are a number of artifacts of the lower Paleolithic that have been found, and these include flint pebbles, a bifacially worked quartz core, chopping tool, and a variety of assorted flakes. Secondly, on the Taman Peninsula in southern Russia, there are early Paleolithic sites at Bogatia, Sinyaya Balka, and Rodniki. So the geology or mammal fauna, the paleontological data, and the paleomagnetic data clearly indicate a middle early Pleistocene, that's an early Beharian in the local terminology, age. The archaeological assemblages are technologically and typologically Oldowan with specific local features. At Dmanisi, Georgia, since 2003, a Georgian-Spanish team has restarted the study of the Dmanisi lithic collection, combined tool-making experimentation with an analysis of a sample of the tools. The stone raw blanks came from nearby outcrops and secondary deposits, and the workability selection of those blanks proves the selection of raw material was well done. Now, small differences in the way in which selection was produced can be detected from levels 2 to 4. The main schema analyzed in the first cluster, that is old level 4, includes a selection of natural forms with a simple napped series, that is about 3 to 4 strikes, using good natural angles with restarting in the same surface with a shorter sequence of 2 to 3 strikes to produce final forms. Now, following this schema, the use of new adequate surfaces can produce polyhedric morphologies in the core during the final steps. Technically, the materials from this level indicate a special kind of percussion, close to a bending effect. The analyzed flakes show attributes that are usually linked to soft hammer percussion, and in this case, after experiments, stone hammer percussion with a special movement of a slow perpendicular strike produces these stigmas. In the second cluster, that is old level 2, the use of better raw materials allowed a longer and successful production of sharp flakes without changing this strategy. The organization of a series implies on occasions the generation of discoid-like morphologies, perhaps because of a more complex organization of series. With the decrease in the size of the blanks, blank dimensions become smaller and thus require speedy angular percussion in order to assure flake production. New technical abilities produce changes in the attributes, sizes, and core morphologies. Everything indicates that first human occupation at Dmanisi, Georgia, involved people with an important background in napping skills that allowed several changes in terms of adaptation to particular lithic environments, raw material selection, technical strategies, as far as known within a short period. Then fourthly, at Trevigolnaya Cave in the northern Caucasus, there is an early Paleolithic core and flake tool industry, 5 Mousterian levels dating 474,000 to 434,000 BP. Now, according to Professor V.B. Doronichev, who wrote the article in Paleoanthropology, The Lower Paleolithic in Eastern Europe and the Caucasus, these contain a stone industry. The earliest levels have Kinson projectile points, a reverse convergent side scraper, a composite tool, a Kina side scraper with the back thinned with flat ventral retouch, a denticulate tool, transverse side scrapers, end scrapers, and simple side scrapers. Then, fifthly, Upper Paleolithic archaeological sites on the Don River date 45,000 to 42,000 years ago. The oldest levels at Kostenki underlie a volcanic ash horizon identified as the Campanian ignimbrite Y5 tephra that dates to 40,000 BP. The occupation layers contain bone and ivory artifacts, figurative art, and fossil shells quarried more than 300 miles away. New radiocarbon data show an increase in the density of East European UP dates during the last glacial maximum and their total disappearance after 15,000 BP. And that occurs here, as well as during the Gravettian, between 37,000 and 30,000 BP. The arrival of the Gravettian toolkit-carrying populations into the far eastern European plains found an unoccupied region. These people are responsible for the appearance of new Upper Paleolithic technologies, new patterns of land use, expanded social networks, and the emergence of complex forms of symbolic communication by 45,000 years ago. This occurs at the same time as Mousterian technology evolved into Aurignacian Upper Paleolithic technology in Western Europe. Now, the most important Don River area is near the village of Kostenki in the Russian Federation, where more than 20 open-air Paleolithic sites are known. Several more sites are found at the village of Borshevo, located about 5 kilometers or 3 miles downstream from Kostenki. The sites are assigned to the Upper Paleolithic and yield skeletal remains of Homo sapiens sapiens. Artifacts found in association with the remains of extinct mammals at Kostenki in 1879 were among the first discoveries of Ice Age peoples in Eastern Europe. By the 1930s, the sites at Kostenki and Borshevo had produced a rich record of Middle and Late Upper Paleolithic occupation, including large feature complexes with traces of suspected dwelling structures. The excavation and study of the occupation floors had a significant impact on theory and method in archaeology during the Soviet period. In the years following the Second World War, more evidence of early Upper Paleolithic occupation was discovered at Kostenki. The recent discovery there several sites contain occupations that underlie the 40,000-year-old Campanian ignimbrite volcanic ash we just mentioned, and provide evidence of the earliest known Upper Paleolithic remains in Eastern Europe. Field research continues today at Kostenki and Borshevo, and the results continue to have an impact on world archaeology. The Kostenki-Borshevo localities include 26 Upper Paleolithic sites on the first and second terraces along the west bank of the Don River near Voronezh on the central East European plain. The strata are grouped into 3 units, and from the bottom up are Unit 1 dating over 50,000 years BP that consists of coarse alluvium representing Upper Terrace II deposits and colluvium overlain by fine grained sediments. Then Unit 2 includes archaeological horizons sealed within 2 sets of thin lenses of silt, carbonate, chalk fragments, and organic rich soils termed the lower humic bed and upper humic bed, dating 50,000 to 30,000 BP, and separating the humic beds is a volcanic ash lens that's identified as the Campanian ignimbrite Y5 tephra, dated elsewhere by argon to 40 BP, not 40,000 BP. The humic beds are the results of the complex interplay of soil formation, spring deposition, and slope action. Several horizons buried in the lower part of Unit 2 contain Upper Paleolithic assemblages. The springs and seeps which are present in the area today emanated from the bedrock valley wall. Their presence may account for the unusually high concentration of Upper Paleolithic sites in this part of the central East European plain. Unit 3 is younger than 30,000 BP and contains redeposited loess with a buried soil, a gamelin soil, overlain by a primary full glacial loess with an associated chernozem, or mollisol, forming the surface of the second terrace. Now there's evidence for Kuhl butchery at least 10 early Upper Paleolithic open-air sites at Kosteki on the west bank of the Don River. During the 1950s, A.N. Rogachev excavated concentrations of horse bones and teeth from the early Upper Paleolithic layers at Kosteki, 14 and 15, exhibiting the characteristics of Kuhl butchery assemblages. And excavations at Kosteki 12 in 2002-2003 uncovered a large quantity of reindeer and horse bones. In EUP Layer 3, there are other Kuhl butchery events, and the partial skeleton of a subadult mammoth was excavated during 2004-2007 in the EUP Layer 5 at Kosteki 1, and it has traces of butchery by humans. The character of these large mammal assemblages, combined with the analysis of artifacts and features, show both to be habitation areas and Kuhl butchery locations in the EUP landscape at Kosteki. Now, in terms of human spirituality, there are at least 20 early Paleolithic sites from the Urals to the western frontiers of the old USSR. The 5 I selected to present to you have one overriding commonality. Homo arrived there by 2 million years ago. The cubic centimeter cranial capacity is in the high Homo australopithecus range of 700 to 1000 cc, or the lower Homo erectus range of 1000 to 1200 cubic centimeters. This means that people started moving very early into more challenging environments than those in which they had emerged in Africa. We have seen that this early movement represented a de facto need to dump unnecessary productive time into as many survival modes of production as possible, thus preventing surplus social product accumulation. There would have been some kind of worldview justification for this movement. However, at bottom, it was survival instinct that propelled this movement. Why is this true? Because surplus social product accumulation would have been lethal, leading as it does to envy, jealousy, coveting, and thus the dissolution of band society. The worldview justification and its dialectical concomitant of reinforcing collectivity by eliminating lethal accumulation is, in a phrase, proof of the origin of human spirituality. Unity was the essential element that gave humans their irrepressible ability to control their environment, and intercontinental migration is the proof that this driving force was extant in the beginning. Now, in the Ukraine, for almost 3 decades, the only evidence of stratified and well-documented Lower Paleolithic in the Ukraine was reported for Korolevo, situated west of the Carpathian Arch. This locality remains the most important in the country and provides 4 Lower Paleolithic assemblages, of which 2 were recognized below the Bruns-Matayama boundary. Several new stratified localities were discovered recently, and among these are the Maly Rakovets 4, situated in the Central European part of Ukraine, and the Medzibos and Maslovo, located in the western edge of the East European plain. All these localities are dated to the Middle Pleistocene. Medzibos has yielded rich and various biostratigraphic data. Some Ukrainian surface localities provide assemblages of likely Lower Paleolithic age, and among these are Dnipro 4 in the Dniester area. Now, in Bulgaria, the Lower Paleolithic occupations of the Balkans begins at Kozarnica, Bulgaria, 1.6 million years ago. Now, by this time, the material culture and environmental features of climate, flora, and fauna indicate continual change, different from contemporary West Europe. The Kozarnica cave in northwestern Bulgaria was a hunter's shelter as early as the Lower Paleolithic 1.6 to 1.4 million BP. It marks an older route of early human migration from Africa to Europe through the Balkans. The cave has the earliest evidence of human symbolic behavior and the earliest European gravet flint assemblages. Kozarnica Cave is located 4 miles from the town of Belogradchik in northwestern Bulgaria, on the northern slopes of the Balkan Mountains close to the Danubian plain. The cave mouth opens to the south, 279 feet above the valley floor. The cave is 689 feet long and among the smallest in the Palaeolithic karst region. There are 21 geological layers containing from bottom to top archaeological complexes of early Lower Paleolithic, layers 13 through 11A, Middle Paleolithic, layers 10B to 9A, and an early Upper Paleolithic layer 6 and 7. It has a sequence of an original Paleolithic bladeless industry with backed pieces that scholars called Kozardikan layers 5C to 3A. Now the lower Paleolithic levels are dated 1.6 to 1.4 million BP by paleomagnetism and by analysis of both the small and large fossils, fauna. Now archaeologists have discovered a human molar tooth of Homo erectus egaster. The lower Paleolithic assemblages are a core and flake non-Acheulean industry. The middle Paleolithic layers contain East Balkan level wall cores and side scrapers, as well as the East Balkan level wall Mousterian points and bifacial points dating from 300,000 to 50,000 BP. They prove the eventual presence of hunters-gatherers of Homo sapiens neanderthalensis. The Upper Paleolithic layer flint assemblage comprises the earliest European gravet complex. These date from 43,000 to 39,000 BP and were made by Homo sapiens sapiens. Since 2015, researchers have started to investigate the nature and impact of human presence on local fauna. Among their objectives is an attempt to get a better understanding of the relationship between the Campanian ignimbrite eruption and its effect on the human occupation in the Kozardika cave. The Campanian ignimbrite supereruption was a major volcanic event in the Mediterranean during the late Quaternary. Now, geologists say that it was caused by the eruption of the Arcflegro volcano. The remains forms of the 8-mile caldera of the Phlegraean Fields. They are located 12 miles west of Mount Vesuvius, under the western outskirts of the city of Naples and the Gulf of Pozzuoli in Italy. Now in Romania, the Upper Paleolithic occupation left mandibular remains of a 37,800-year-old Homo sapiens sapiens at the cave with bones, the Pisteler cu Ossi, near Anina. Now this 2002 discovery of a mandible featured with a mixture of archaic and sapiens features. A second expedition discovered further fragments, including a skull dated at 36,000 BP. Two human fossil remains found in the Muiri and the Sioclovina caves in Romania date to 30,000 BP. In 2000, a physical analysis of these fossils began, and then one sample of bone was taken from the skull from Sioclovina for radiocarbon dating. Samples were taken from the scapula and tibia from the Muiri cave. Bahia de Fier dated to 30,150 plus or minus 800 years BP, and the skull from Sioclovina cave date to 29,000 plus or minus 700 years BP. In Hungary, near the small village of Vertezoios, northwest of Budapest, in Komárom-Esztergom County, a rich lower Paleolithic site is located. The longest period in the story of mankind in Hungary begins here, 400,000 years ago. After this date, the non-living and living environment, human phenotypes included, underwent changes as the climate repeatedly cooled and warmed. The Old Stone Age collection came into being in 1951 in what was then the museum's prehistoric collection, with the bringing together of Paleolithic finds kept at the Hungarian State Institute for Geology and at the museum's Department of Paleontology. Its founder and first head was Laszlo Vertes, who, up until his death in 1968, added to the material by way of finds recovered during excavations. Following excavations by Viola T. Dobosi and Andres Marco, and donations of artifacts by avocational collectors, the collection built an inventory of many tens of thousands of entries. In fact, there are now millions of stone and bone implements and artifacts from the first appearance of art. In 1960, the first bone fragments and tools were found there. Then Laszlo Vertis discovered the prehistoric site. The people gave the human bones found there the name Samu because it was discovered on Samuel's Day. Today there is a museum in the area where you can see the footprints of the prehistoric human next to its fireplace, flint tools, a cuspid of a saber-toothed tiger, and the remains of several ancient plant species. In the Czech Republic, at Kolna Level 11, we have a Middle Paleolithic microlithic assemblage. It is famous for this microlithic assemblage named Taubachian. This kind of industry also exists at other sites in Central Europe. The assemblage analysis proves it was autochthonous. New optically stimulated luminescence, OSL dates from Kolna and other Central European sites of Stranska Skala Bohunice, Vetrovice 5, Vetrovice 1A, Morovsky, Krumlov 4, and Zerov Skala date to Middle Upper Paleolithic Transition period. One OSL, that's the optically stimulated luminescent date result from Kolna, opens up the possibility that Homo sapiens neanderthalensis may have survived in this part of Europe past 30,000 BP, as has been argued for several Neanderthal sites in southern Europe. The large Silesian assemblies recovered from Vedrovice 5 may be significantly older than previously thought, which undermines the idea that the Silesian culture is exclusively an early Upper Paleolithic industry. In Slovakia, radiocarbon dating puts the oldest surviving archaeological artifacts from Slovakia near Nové Mesto nad Váhom, dating at 270,000 BP, that is in the early Paleolithic era. This ancient toolkit features the Clactonian technique. Now, other stone tools from the Slovakian Middle Paleolithic date 200,000 to 80,000 BP, come from the Prepost cave near Bojnice and other nearby sites. The most important discovery from that era is a Homo sapiens neanderthalensis cranium that dates 200,000 BP, discovered near Gadovš village in northern Slovakia. Archaeologists have found prehistoric Homo sapiens skeletons in the region. There are Gravettian artifacts in the river valleys of Nitra, Ron, Ipel, and Val. Other remains of Gravettian industry carriers are found as far as the city of Žilina, as well as near the foot of Vihorlat, Inovec, and the Tribec and Majava mountains. The well-known finds include the oldest female statue made of mammoth bone, dating 24,800 BP, called the Venus Moravani. Now, the figurine was found in the 1940s in the Moravani Nad Vehom near Piestany. Numerous necklaces made of shells from Cypraka thermophile gastropods of the Tertiary period have come from the sites of Podkovic, Ubina, and Radosina. These findings provide the most ancient evidence of commercial exchange between the Mediterranean and Central Europe. In Austria, at Willendorf II, is one of the rare sites to offer a good chronostratigraphic framework for the period between 45,000 and 25,000 BP in Central Europe. Located in the Wachau on a lower terrace of the Danube, it has yielded 9 archaeological layers classically ascribed to the early Upper Paleolithic, the Aurignacian, and the Gravettian. The chronostratigraphic and cultural background of the lowest layers, 1 through 4, of the Willendorf sequence are shown in the accompanying diagram. Now, with good carbon-14 datings and chronostratigraphic observations, it is now possible to better document this key period for the understanding of the appearance of Upper Paleolithic industries in Central Europe. Which brings us to Poland. Stone Age and territory of today's Poland is divided into the Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic eras. The Paleolithic extended from about 500,000 to 8,000 years ago. The Paleolithic is divided into periods. The Lower Paleolithic, 500 to 350,000. The Middle Paleolithic, 350 to 40,000. And the Upper Paleolithic to 40,000 to 12,000. And the Final Paleolithic, 12,000 to 8,000. The Mesolithic dated from 8,000 to 5,500. BC, and the Neolithic from 5500 to 2300 BC. And then the Neolithic is subdivided into the Neolithic proper, 5500 to 2900, and the Copper Age, 2900 to 2300. The Stone Age lasted 1 million years and involved 3 different human species, or grades. The first to enter Poland was Homo erectus. Homo erectus evolved into Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, and these evolved into Homo sapiens sapiens. These Stone Age cultures began as hunting and gathering societies with primitive tools to advanced agricultural societies with appropriate sophisticated stone tools. Then they built fortified settlements and developed copper metallurgy. As elsewhere in Eastern and Central Europe, the Stone Age human cultures went through the stages known as Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic, each bringing new refinements of the stone tool making techniques. The Paleolithic period human activities, with its earliest sites at least 500,000 years ago, were intermittent because of the recurring periods of glaciation. With the recession of the last glaciation, a general climate warming and the resulting increase in environment diversity was characteristic of the Mesolithic from 9000 to 8000 BC. The Neolithic brought the first settled agricultural communities. Their founders migrated from the Danube area from about 7,500 years ago. Later, the native post-Mesolithic populations also adopted and further developed the agricultural way of life from 6,400 to about 4,000 years ago. Preparation for the Neolithic Revolution. In Old World archaeology, Mesolithic is the period between the Upper Paleolithic and the Neolithic. The term Epipaleolithic is used synonymously for the corresponding period in the Caucasus. During the Late Paleolithic, natural conditions in western Russia were much similar to those in northern Germany, Poland, the Baltic countries, southern Scandinavia, Belorussia, and the northern Ukraine. This uniformity led to the spread of similar cultural groups of reindeer hunters over vast territories. Sites of the Feder-Messer culture are known on the Upper Volga and near Moscow, whereas eastern Arensbergian sites were excavated on the Upper Dnieper and Upper Volga. Swiderian sites were discovered in the Pskov region and the Upper Volga. The beginning of the Mesolithic in western Russia coincides with transition from the Pleistocene to the Holocene. The formation of Mesolithic cultures of hunters, fishers, and gatherers of the forest zone took place against a background of environmental changes. The mixture of final Feder-Messer and Arensbergian groups gave birth to the Ianevo and Pesosochny Roth cultures. Most of western Russia was occupied during the Mesolithic by descendants of the final Swiderian culture, among them the Butovo and the Kunda. Verotype cultures have been studied more than others, and several smaller groups of other traditions are known. During the last 2 decades, excavations and surveys have been conducted in the western part of Russia. The number of late Paleolithic and early Mesolithic sites is rather small, however, and only a few of them were excavated on a large scale. Only several have reliable pollen, carbon-14, and geological dating. Nevertheless, we are able to determine main processes which took place in western Russia in the period under study and trace the main late Paleolithic cultural units and Mesolithic cultures. For our purposes, it is important to note that the preparation for food production, as opposed to food collecting, was on hand when cultigens from the Near East arrived. A review of the Epipaleolithic sites post-dating the late glacial maximum in the northern and southern Caucasus, and the few securely excavated Epipaleolithic sites show homogeneous artifact assemblages. These contain tool types characteristic of the Epipaleolithic industries in Europe and in the Near East, tool types characteristic of the Caucasian Epipaleolithic over 14,000 years ago are distinct. A climatostratigraphic scheme of the Caucasian Epipaleolithic was created from paleoenvironmental data and radiocarbon dates, and several of these occurrences in the southern and northern Caucasus represent a specific Epipaleolithic industry dating from 17 to 12,000 BP. The original term, Amorettian culture, may be applied to this industry type. Contacts between the inhabitants of these EPP occupations, that is, Epipaleolithic occupations, are shown by new data. These detail the obsidian transport networks from sources in the southwest Caucasus and in the central part of the northern Caucasus to EPP sites in the northwestern Caucasus. High mobility of human groups in the Epipaleolithic was the most significant factor determining the affinity of the EPP industries across the Caucasus. And that brings us to a conclusion of our lecture on primitive communism of the hunting and gathering variety in Eastern Europe from the Caucasus to the Danube. And next we're going to go to the Neolithic Revolution in the same place.